What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I just got back from fishing. It's actually a nice day today in Ohio. It was, I think it was 66 outside, which it's really nice recently. We've had the, 60 some day and then 30 the next, 30 to 40 mile an hour winds every day. It sucks. That's spring fishing, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Sorry if there's a lot of lawnmowers going on. I came out here and everybody in the neighborhood decided it's time to mow the lawn, man. But look at this shirt, Tackle Warehouse. Good stuff. Coogan baits, good stuff. Anyway, let's talk about what I wanted to talk about today, which is spring fishing and how to increase your chances when going out this spring. And when I mean spring, I'm not talking like 80 degrees. I'm talking like, the weather is just breaking, some 60 degrees, maybe 70-degree days, especially up here north. So we're talking early spring. Let's start off by talking weather. One of the ways you can increase your chances of catching fish during the spring are really focusing on the weather and going out on days that aren't crappy, honestly. Like, for example, it's 60 today, and the last 2 days, the weather was consistent. We didn't have a 30-degree drop or increase or anything like that. So you really want to look for consistent weather in the spring. You want, I'd say, probably 2 to 3 days of consistent, we'll just say for Ohio's sake, 50 and above temps, 40 at the lowest at night. You don't want to go below that, or the fish like to shut off really easily. And believe it or not, rain is actually kind of good in the spring. Rain in the spring actually tends to warm up the water because the water is still coming up from that, that winter transition, and it's still turning over. So the water's still really cold relatively. So some things you want to look for is rain isn't terrible. It can be if it blows out the lake and makes it completely bombed out muddy, but rain isn't terrible. Neither are streams and any sort of inlets. Like, for example, if there's a culvert pipe or a stream, river, whatever that runs into your lake or pond, that water is going to tend to be warmer as well, which the fish are looking for warmer water. So what happens over winter, yes, they do go down deeper to survive and kind of like hibernate in a way. But what happens in winter is there's pockets, I forget what they're called, but in these pockets down deep, there's almost no oxygen left for these fish. So the fish want to get up into the shallower water for 2 reasons. Number 1, there's more oxygen in the water. Number 2, the water's warmer. So, these fish are still very lethargic. Probably in the next 2 weeks here in Ohio, we're going to start getting onto shad spawn and stuff like that. I've already seen tons of minnows and ponds that I've been to. And I haven't really been filming because my big boat's out of commission. The starter went on it, sadly. That's getting fixed. And then, as you can see, my John boat has stuff all over it right now. That's not a big deal, I can move it, but we've had 30 to 40 mile an hour gust consistently, so couldn't really take it out even if I move the stuff. So now, even though I said there's, the shallower water tends to be warmer because the sun warms it up faster. For example, 3 to 5 foot of water might be 70 degrees in the early spring, as to where the 10 foot is still in the 60s. It is drastically different. That's why it really pays to know, your weather recently. And if you have a fish finder on there that has temperature, which it should if it's newer, don't just go out to your favorite spot. I mean, you can go out to your favorite spot, but what I'm saying is, if you go there and on your way there you notice it's getting colder, it's probably not gonna be that good. You want to try to find that warmer water. Head to the back of bays, head to inlets, streams, culverts, any sort of water flowage. In the summer, it's the opposite. That water flowage is actually colder because the rain that's falling is colder and it cools down with the streams and everything. But right now, the rain and inlets and rivers are actually warmer. So those are places you definitely want to hit first. And although I'm saying that these fish like to go shallower, they're not there all day. I mean, some species might be, but generally these fish, they'll come up for, I don't know, a few hours for the day, or they'll sit right on the edge of that drop off from, we'll just say 5 foot to 8 foot for an example. And they'll sit right there and they'll wait to feed. You know, they're not gonna go chasing food. It's not that time yet. Give it mid-spring, early summer, then they'll be out cruising around looking for food. They'll be shallow all day almost until it gets too hot, and that's a whole different story. That's horrible. Dead mid-summer, 99 degrees, that's rough fishing. And another thing, muddier water is actually warmer than clear water, which you would think it's not good to fish muddy water. The fish can hardly see the bait. You're not catching many fish, nothing like that. But being that spring, like I said, the water's still warming up, so the fish like to go in that muddy water, even though they can't see that much. Normally you would tend to look for, the transitional water or clear water when you're out fishing in the summer, but it does pay off to look for not completely bombed out water, but some slightly stained water, because all that debris and the mud and stuff that's coming up off the bottom from the rains and stuff, when the sun hits that, it actually helps the water warm up a lot faster. So the fish like that. So just to go over the 3 things again, we have consistent weather. So you don't want it being 60 or 70 one day and then 30 at night or 40 for the high the next day. You want a consistent, probably 2, 3, maybe 4 days. Winds play a big factor in that as well. If it's super windy, it's gonna bomb out the lake and it's gonna be harder to catch fish. They're gonna be sitting right up against cover and you're gonna have to hit them in the face to get them to bite because they can't see the lure if the water's too muddy. So it's a double-edged sword. So we have consistent weather. We have fishing inlets such as rivers or culverts or streams, any type of flowing water. And then we have fishing the not muddy water, but the more stained water, and not necessarily fishing shallow, but fishing the transitions and secondary points that fish move up to in the summer or in the spring. Now, when I say secondary points, I'm talking, it could be anything. It can be in your pond, it can be in your lake, whatever. Any sort of land structure, whatever, any sort of point that goes in the water, those fish are going to come up to, but they're not going to come up all the way to it. So if you have a depth finder, it really helps. If you have like Navionics or Lake Master, whatever like that, before you go to a lake, look for points. It doesn't have to be off of rivers. It can be right in the middle of the lake. They might be 10, 15 foot deep. They might be 5 or 8, depending on how deep your lakes are, or even deeper than that. But you just want to look for the points that come out, and you don't want to fish all the way up on them, but you want to fish close to them. So for example, if you roll up to a pond you've never been to, and it's almost an oval, but it does have some, I guess, structure, we'll call it, or yeah, like points. If it has points, it's probably a good idea to start there if you don't know anything else about the pond, because the fish like to come up on those points and just kind of sit there getting ready for the transition into their spawn. This is kind of like the pre-spawn period, is what I'm saying. They're getting ready to move up. They're waiting for warmer water, consistent weather. They're waiting for water levels to kind of flatten out, because during the spring, those water levels are going way up high and dropping down low. They want consistency before they spawn. So they're going to come out to these secondary points. Now, being that we're still in that pre-spawn era, as I'm talking about now, at least up here north, I know south, like Texas and stuff, they've already spawned, like probably almost a month ago. But right now, in that pre-spawn, you still got to keep it slow. I got a few baits here that I've been using recently that have caught fish. And this is just kind of like the ideal, what you want to use. So right here I have a mini Recon by Guggen Squad. This dives 3 to 6 foot. It's a crankbait. And see that yellow, black top, orange bottom. just really vibrant colors in the spring work a lot more than something natural, at least up here north from what I've noticed. On the other end of the spectrum, dark colors, your black and blue works really well in the spring. Anything you fish, you don't want to have real erratic action. You want to have more of a consistent, like, not constantly jerking the rod. You want to kind of just roll it in real slow. You know, we're not in summer. These fish aren't going crazy. They're not out looking for food all day, just looking for something to eat or attack just for fun. So let's see, I've got the black and blue jig. Now there's always a big talk about what size bait you should use in the spring and whatnot. Personally, I found that you either go real big or you go real small. In between, you're not going to catch nothing. So one of my favorites is like 3/8 ounce jigs. That's not big at all. I mean, the profile may look a little big on camera. There we go, maybe that's better. Maybe I've had this in too far the whole time. No, but still always use a trailer. Just fish this stuff slow. You know, you don't want to be sitting there constantly jerking it. You might toss it out there, let it sit for 15, 30 seconds, maybe even, before you even start reeling it or giving it another tug. Now, one bait that has worked absolutely excellent for me recently is a chatterbait, or otherwise known as a bladed jig. The one I've been using is actually black and blue. It's the Z-Man original chatterbait in 3/8 ounce, and I paired that with a Z-Man black and blue turbo craw, and I just cut it down so the profile on the craw is a lot smaller. But what I've noticed is in the spring, when you're slow rolling those baits, those fish really want something to activate them. So the blade on the bladed jig, or chatterbait as it's known, gives it that sound profile, but it also looks like a jig. And then with the trailer on the back, the trailer's flanges makes it look like either, you know, crawfish claws or pinchers, I guess they're called. I have no idea. Or, you know, like a fish's tail. So just slow rolling the chatterbait, not jerking it. Now this chatterbait does have the Guggen Baits saucy swimmer on there in 3.8 inch. Paddle tail swim baits can be really good in the spring, but I would suggest downsizing them. Like this 3/8, just 3.8 inch, honestly I think it's too big. If I had 3.3s, I would put that on there. Another thing guys do is they'll take paddle tail swim baits and they'll cut off the tail, just giving it a bulkier profile but a little bit less action in the back, because these fish are still basically lethargic. They're just starting to get active, like I keep saying. You just don't want anything extremely erratic, although something like a spinnerbait is amazing right now. So it's kind of, you know, it's a double-edged sword. With the spinnerbait, it's great in the spring. I honestly haven't had success with it, but I haven't fished it that much, so that's one of the reasons. I prefer the chatterbait tenfold. The baits that I'm really going to suggest today, though, would be a jig, a crankbait, and a chatterbait. And then if you like spinner baits, go ahead and throw one of those on. I'd probably downsize, like 3/8 ounce. I wouldn't do the 1/2 ounce ones. But whatever bait you do pick, just slow roll it. Don't make it very erratic in the spring. Fish it on those secondary points. Fish it by culverts, in streams or rivers, and inflows is what I'm saying. Any sort of current works really well. I think I actually covered, everything I wanted to say. It's always hard. There's so much information out there and there's so many different scenarios. I can tell you as much as I know about something, but one change in the weather or drop in water temperature, whatever, can change everything that I say. So it's really hard to get everything into one video and tell you all the details about every different thing. My number one thing that I can give you is to get out there and start trying stuff. Fish more, fish different baits, fish what you're not used to. You know, don't go to the same spots. If you do go to the same lake, hit up different spots, learn how to fish them a little bit better. Because one day you might go to those different spots and bam, 5-pound bass, one after another. and no one else on the lake's catching anything. So it's all about experience. I do know a lot, but there's just so many factors. If there's anything else you would like to know about early spring fishing, as always, leave a comment below. I will do my best to answer it. I might even make a video of it. And of course, there's another truck coming by. Hey, at least the one thing, there are no planes anywhere. So you know how you always watch fishing videos or whatever, and they're always out in a boat trying to explain something, and then here comes like 6 planes just as loud as can be. That's the one benefit about this stuff we won't talk about going on. And with that being said, I hope you liked the video. And if you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, tell your friends, get somebody new into fishing, and I will see you later.